Rain poured down that evening as Emma Carter hurried along the narrow street. She held her small umbrella close, but the wind twisted it again and again. Her shoes were soaked through, and her white nursing uniform clung to her legs. The hospital shift had been long, but going home felt peaceful to her after helping patients all day. She did not expect anything unusual to happen. She only wanted a warm cup of tea, dry socks, and quiet rest. When Emma turned the corner, bright headlights flashed across her face. Dark SUV stood tilted near the road shoulder, one tire flat, steam curling from under the hood. The driver's door was open, and someone sat beside the car, leaning against the metal. At first, she thought he was waiting for a repair service. Then she saw the red on his shirt sleeve. It was blood. Her feet slowed. She looked around for other people, but the street was almost empty. Only 2 cars went by without stopping. She was shy, always hesitant around strangers, but the sight of that bleeding arm made her forget her fear. She closed her broken umbrella and ran toward the car. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. The man looked up. Rain slid down his face. Dark hair stuck to his forehead. "It's nothing serious," he said, trying to smile. His eyes were steady but pale from pain. "Just cut my arm when I tried to fix the engine." Emma knelt beside him. Years of basic medical training guided her hands. She opened her little bag and pulled out a clean handkerchief. "You lost blood," she said. "I need to stop it." He hesitated. "You don't have to trouble yourself. You'll be fine." She shook her head and tore a strip from her scarf. "I'm a nursing student. Please let me help." Her voice was quiet but firm. For a moment he said nothing. Then he nodded. The cut was deep but clean, likely from a sharp metal edge. She cleaned it with alcohol wipes she always carried from her hospital shifts. He winced but stayed silent. When the bleeding stopped, she wrapped the scarf around his arm and tied it carefully. "You should go to a clinic," she said. "You may need stitches. I'll manage." He gave her a small, polite nod. "You're very kind." Most people would have just driven past. Emma looked embarrassed and shrugged. "I couldn't ignore you." Rainwater ran down the road in small rivers, soaking the hem of her uniform. She stood brushing the dirt from her knees. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" she asked. He shook his head. "I already contacted my driver. He'll be here soon. I can wait." She gave a small smile. "Then I'll go now. Take care." "Wait," his voice stopped her. "What's your name?" "Emma?" She hesitated before adding, "Emma Carter." He repeated it quietly, as if testing the sound. "Thank you, Emma Carter." His calm tone gave her a strange feeling of comfort and curiosity. She wanted to ask his name too, but her shy nature held her tongue. Instead, she nodded and backed away. A few seconds later, a black car appeared at the end of the street. Emma turned and walked toward her small apartment building, unaware that the stranger's eyes followed her until she disappeared into the rain. Inside her room, she changed into dry clothes and set her kettle on the stove. The memory of the man's face stayed in her mind. There had been something about him that felt different, like he carried both strength and sadness under that calm surface. She wondered if he had reached the hospital, but she told herself not to overthink. It was a small act of kindness, nothing more. Yet when she placed the damp scarf on the chair, she noticed a faint drop of blood on the edge. She washed it carefully, watching the red swirl away in the sink. She smiled faintly, thinking how unpredictable life could be. Sometimes strangers appeared out of nowhere, touched your day for one brief moment, and then vanished as if they had never been there. The morning light slipped through the thin curtains of Emma Carter's small apartment. She woke up early, still tired from last night, but she had classes and a hospital shift waiting for her. As she prepared her uniform and tied her hair into a neat ponytail, her mind drifted back to the man from the rainy road. She hoped he was fine and that his wound had not gotten worse. She almost laughed at herself for thinking about a stranger she would never meet again. The hospital where Emma trained was always busy, filled with the sounds of wheels, voices, and electronic beeps. Nurses hurried down the bright halls, and patients called for assistance. Emma smiled politely as she walked past the reception desk and began her routine. The day felt normal until whispers started floating through the hallway. "Someone important is visiting the hospital today," one nurse told another. "They say the CEO of a large company is coming." Emma only half listened as she organized medical supplies. Visitors like that came sometimes to meet the hospital director or take part in charity events. She placed thermometers in a tray and focused on her work. Then, a sudden stir near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Men in suits entered first, holding umbrellas and speaking into small earpieces. Behind them came a tall man in a charcoal suit. His presence changed the air around him. Doctors respectfully straightened their coats. Nurses exchanged glances. And the director rushed forward with a practiced smile. When Emma looked up, her heart skipped. The man was the same one she had helped on that rainy night. His hair was now brushed back neatly, and his injured arm was wrapped in a clean bandage. There was no trace of the tired man she had found by the road. He looked powerful and composed, the kind of person who commanded attention with a single glance. The director hurried to greet him. "Mr. Cole, we're honored to have you here. Please this way." Mr. Cole. So that was his name. Ethan Cole. Emma felt her breath catch in surprise. He was not just any wealthy man. She remembered hearing about that name before. Ethan Cole was the CEO of Cole Health Technologies, a company known for developing medical equipment and supporting hospitals across the state. He was famous for his success, respected by many, and always serious in public life. Emma tried to blend into the background, not wanting to attract notice. But as the group walked past her, Ethan's eyes suddenly met hers. Recognition flashed in them. He slowed his pace. The hospital director kept talking, unaware that Ethan had stopped listening. Ethan took a few steps back toward her. "You," he said quietly. "Emma Carter, right?" The room around them seemed to pause. Several nurses turned their heads curiously. Emma's fingers tightened around the clipboard she held. "Yes, sir," she said in a small voice, unsure if she should bow or step back. He nodded slowly. "You helped me last night." Her cheeks warmed. "I'm glad you're all right." His serious face softened into an expression of gratitude. "I'm more than all right. You took care of me without even knowing who I was. The kind of kindness is rare." The hospital director cleared his throat gently, unsure what to say. But Ethan continued, looking directly at Emma. "I wanted to thank you properly. My assistant tried to find you, but you disappeared before I could ask your name." Emma felt every pair of eyes in the hallway watching. "I only did what anyone would do," she whispered. "No," Ethan said firmly. "Most people would have driven past. You didn't." His tone was quiet, but carried weight. He nodded once more, then turned to the director. "Carry on with the meeting. But I'd like Miss Carter to assist me later. There's something I'd like to discuss with her." Emma blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. The director looked equally surprised, but quickly nodded. "Of course, Mr. Cole." As Ethan walked away with his team, whispers spread through the room again. Some nurses smiled at Emma, teasing her in gentle voices. Others simply looked amazed. Emma stood still, confused by the turn of events. The rest of the morning passed with difficulty. She tried to focus on her tasks, but her thoughts chased themselves in circles. Why would a powerful CEO want to talk to her? It made no sense. Maybe he wanted to thank her with a gift, but that idea alone made her uncomfortable. She had never done anything for reward. Later, when a hospital staff member told her the director wanted to see her in the boardroom, her heart began to race. Emma stood near the door of the boardroom, her hands pressed together tightly. The large table looked too shiny, and the walls felt too tall. She had never been in that room before. Only doctors, managers, and visitors of high rank came there. Now she was standing among them, her white nurse uniform plain against the polished suits and fine dresses. Ethan Cole turned toward her with a gentle look that made her both nervous and curious. "Please come in, Miss Carter," he said. His voice was calm and direct, the kind of voice that made people listen without question. She stepped forward slowly, her steps small and uncertain. The director smiled politely at her, then nodded toward Ethan. "Mr. Cole asked to speak with you before the meeting begins. You are free to talk." Ethan motioned for her to sit. "I know this might feel strange," he said, "but I want to thank you properly. What you did last night wasn't small. You stopped to help me when I was just another person on the street. You didn't know I was a CEO. You didn't ask for anything. You simply did what you thought was right." Emma looked down at her hands resting in her lap. "I only followed what we learned in nursing school," she said softly. "Anyone in pain deserves help." Ethan smiled at her modesty. "That is easy to say, but not everyone lives by it," he replied. "Many are too busy or afraid to get involved." He paused, then glanced at the director. "That is why I made a decision last night." The director straightened his glasses. "Mr. Cole wanted the hospital staff to be the first to know," he said proudly. Then Ethan took a breath and began to speak. "I built my company to improve lives through technology," he said, "but sometimes we forget the heart behind our mission. Miss Carter reminded me of that. So today I am starting a scholarship program for nursing students who show compassion, strength, and honesty. We'll help them pay their tuition and continue training in this hospital. The scholarship will carry the name Hope in Action. The first recipient will be Emma Carter." For a second, Emma could not move. Her mouth parted in surprise, but no words came out. She could hear the soft stir of papers and the faint gasps of people in the room. The hospital director looked at her with wide eyes, smiling proudly. "I don't know what to say," Emma whispered. "You don't have to do this." Ethan shook his head. "It's not only for you. It's for every student like you. But it begins with you, because your kindness started it." Her throat tightened. Gratitude filled her chest, along with confusion. She did not want people to think she had helped him for gain, because she never had. "Thank you," she said finally. "I don't know if I deserve this, but thank you." Ethan leaned forward a little. "You deserve much more than you think. I have met many people who work with great skill, but few who care as deeply as you do." The board members quietly applauded. The sound filled the room, warm and gentle. Emma stood awkwardly, trying to smile. Wanted to melt away, but there was kindness in Ethan's eyes that steadied her. He reached out his right hand and waited for her to shake it. She placed her hand in his and felt how strong and calm he was compared to her. "I should return to my duties," she said after a moment. "Of course," he replied. "But if you accept the scholarship, I want you to meet with my team later this week. We'll handle the details together." When she stepped out into the hallway, her friends from the nursing department rushed toward her. They were excited and could barely stop talking. Some hugged her, and others laughed in amazement. Emma blushed at all the attention and told them she had done nothing special. Still, their joy made her realize that kindness had ripples reaching farther than she could see. Later that evening, as she sat in the hospital garden during her break, she noticed Ethan standing a few steps away, speaking with the hospital director. He wore the same confident look she had now come to expect. But when he turned and saw her sitting under the small tree by the bench, his expression softened for a brief moment, gave a short nod, and then returned to his conversation. Emma watched quietly. She wondered why his attention felt different from others. He was older, richer, and lived in another world, yet when she looked into his eyes, she sensed a kind of loneliness that mirrored her own. She brushed the thought away and focused on finishing her sandwich. Inside the hospital, her name spread across every floor before the day ended. Some called her lucky, others called her an inspiration. But Emma only thought of the rain, the wound, and the way a small decision to help had changed her life. She still did not fully understand what would happen next. Yet something within her whispered that this was only the beginning of a story neither of them expected. The days after the scholarship announcement moved quickly for Emma. People she had never spoken to before stopped her in the hallways to smile or offer congratulations. Her classmates looked at her with a mix of pride and curiosity. Some thought she must have known Ethan Cole before, which made her blush and shake her head. She kept repeating that it was only luck, that she had done nothing great. But deep inside, a small warmth stayed with her each time she remembered how he had looked at her that day in the boardroom. Emma began working with Ethan's company staff on details about the scholarship. They came often, carrying papers and schedules, and sometimes Ethan came with them. At first, Emma felt uneasy whenever he appeared, afraid of making mistakes or saying something foolish. Yet Ethan always spoke to her with patience. He asked about her studies, her patients, and her family. His calm voice made her feel at ease, even when his presence reminded her of how different their worlds were. One afternoon, Ethan arrived at the hospital without his usual team. He carried 2 paper cups of coffee and waited outside the training room. When Emma stepped out at the end of her shift, he offered her one of the cups. "You look tired," he said. "I thought you might like this." "I have been told hospital coffee is terrible." Emma smiled and accepted the cup. "It is," she said. "This is much better." They walked to the garden behind the hospital, where patients sometimes sat during sunny days. The trees were green, and the wind carried a soft smell of flowers. Emma sat on the bench, and Ethan sat a short distance away. "I have meetings all day," he said, "but somehow I prefer being here. It reminds me why I started all this work." Emma took a small sip of coffee. "Most people see CEOs as strong and confident," she said carefully. "It is strange to think you need reminders." He laughed lightly. "Strong people forget things too. We all do. Success can make you blind if you let it." It was strange to sit beside a man who was known across the city, yet he spoke simply, almost like someone she had known for years. He asked her about her dreams, and she spoke of wanting to work in children's care when she finished her studies. She told him she liked helping kids because their smiles healed her in return. He listened closely, his eyes kind. From that day, their friendship began to grow quietly. Sometimes he came to the hospital cafeteria instead of meeting her in the boardroom. He liked to listen to the stories of nurses and trainees, even joined the nursing students one afternoon as they prepared gift bags for patients. Everyone looked surprised seeing a CEO in rolled-up sleeves helping pack supplies. Emma laughed for the first time in weeks when he struggled to tie the ribbons properly. The more they spent time together, the more Emma noticed small things about him. He often looked serious when he thought no one was watching, as if carrying worries too heavy to share. His phone rang nonstop, but sometimes he put it away just to sit quietly. Once, as they walked near the hospital gate, he told her about his parents, who had both been doctors, but had died young. That memory, he said, was the reason he built his company. Emma listened in silence, touched by his honesty. He began visiting more often, sometimes bringing new hospital equipment or offering to fund small programs for students. But he always found a reason to speak to Emma at least once during each visit. At times he joked about her shyness and told her it made her braver than anyone he knew, because being gentle in a loud world took courage. She would blush and change the subject, but in her heart, his words stayed. One evening, after a long day, Emma was helping an elderly patient find his way to the elevator when she noticed Ethan standing at the end of the hall. He waited until she was done, then walked to her. "You work harder than anyone here," he said. "Will you join me for dinner tonight? Want to thank you properly?" She hesitated, unsure if it was right to accept. Yet his simple tone made it feel like an invitation from a friend, not a powerful man. They went to a small family restaurant near the hospital. Emma was surprised that he chose such a quiet place. They talked about small things, about her favorite books, and his love for jogging by the river in the morning. The talk was warm and slow, and both forgot the world outside for a while. When he drove her back to the hospital, they stood beside the car for a few minutes. The city lights shone softly on the pavement. Emma looked up at him, feeling that strange link between them again, something she could not name but could clearly feel. He smiled at her and said, "You remind me that good people still exist, Emma." She smiled back and thanked him. When she walked away, her heart felt light, but unsure. She knew something was growing between them, something gentle that neither wanted to name yet. It was like invisible threads connecting to different worlds, quietly pulling them closer, with every small act of understanding and every kind word they shared. The weeks turned into months, and Emma's life slowly began to change in quiet ways. People still talked about her scholarship, but now they also spoke of her calm confidence. She helped train new students and cared for many patients with steady kindness. Her days filled with work, yet her evenings often carried soft moments that stayed in her memory. Like Ethan waiting in the garden after meetings or joining her in the cafeteria for short talks between the noise of the hospital. They never spoke about what was growing between them, but each meeting added another thread to the bond that tied their lives together. One afternoon, the hospital announced that a charity gala would be held in the City Hall ballroom. The goal was to raise money for new children's beds and small medical tools. Ethan's company had agreed to sponsor the event, so his name appeared on every banner and invitation. When the director asked Emma to attend as a representative of the nursing students, she tried to refuse at first. Crowds made her nervous. The director smiled and said, "You were part of the reason this event became possible." People want to see the heart of this story. On the evening of the gala, Emma stood in front of her mirror wearing a simple light blue dress. Her hair was pinned neatly and she wore no jewelry except a small silver bracelet her mother had given her long ago. She looked at her reflection and took a slow breath. She still felt like the same shy student she used to be, but tonight the world would see her standing among people of power. She stepped into the waiting taxi and told herself that she could face anything for one night. The ballroom was bright and grand, filled with laughter, music, and the sound of footsteps on marble floors. Waiters moved between groups carrying trays of drinks. Ethan stood near the stage, talking to donors and hospital staff, his tall figure graceful in a black suit. He looked confident and composed as always, surrounded by cameras flashing in bursts of light. Emma stayed near the corner, holding a glass of water and trying to stay unnoticed. After a while, she felt the crowd press closer as Ethan moved through the room greeting guests. She caught glimpses of him speaking politely, shaking hands with people she had only seen in newspapers. She suddenly felt very small again. The difference between his life and hers seemed too wide. What was she doing there wearing a dress that probably cost less than the flowers on the tables? When she saw him taking pictures with a group of executives, she quietly turned toward the exit. She thought it was better to leave unnoticed before anyone asked questions she could not answer. But before she could reach the door, a familiar, calm voice stopped her. "Emma, where are you going?" She turned and saw Ethan walking toward her. His eyes were gentle but firm. "You cannot leave now," he said. "I was hoping you would stand beside me tonight." She shook her head lightly. "This is your world, Ethan. I do not belong here. Everyone is watching you, not me." He looked at her for a moment, then spoke softly. "You have more right to be here than anyone in this room. It was your simple kindness that started all this. Without you, none of this would even be happening." He took her hand and guided her toward the stage as the host called for attention. The crowd fell silent. Ethan stepped up to the microphone with Emma beside him, began to speak, his voice sure and steady so that everyone listened closely. "I am thankful for every person who came tonight," he said. "But I want to share a small story. A few months ago, on a rainy night, I met someone who taught me the true meaning of compassion. She did not know who I was. She only saw a stranger who needed help. That person is standing beside me now. Her name is Emma Carter. She reminded me that no matter how much success we have, kindness must always come first." There was a quiet moment before the room filled with applause. Cameras flashed again, but Emma no longer felt out of place. She looked at Ethan and saw pride and warmth shining in his eyes. He turned toward her and whispered, "You changed my life, Emma." She smiled, her heart steady and full. The rest of the evening passed in soft light and laughter. Many guests came to speak with her, but what stayed with her was not the praise or attention. It was the quiet look Ethan gave her when no one else was watching, a look that told her everything that words could not. When the gala ended, they walked together outside into the cool night. The city shimmered around them, but for a moment it felt peaceful and still. Ethan turned to her and said, "You gave me hope I did not know I needed. I do not want this to end." Emma looked up at him, the same shy smile she had worn that rainy evening returning to her face. "It started with one small act," she said softly. "Maybe it was meant to be." Under the glow of the streetlights, the distance between their worlds quietly disappeared. Two lives that had once touched by accident were now bound by choice. The nurse who only wanted to help had found not just purpose, but love, stitched into her story by fate and kindness, held strong like soul strings that would never break.